Good evening, Wells, and welcome to the Seahawks 360 podcast. We look at the Seahawks from every angle every week. I'm Candace Higgins,
And I'm Tino Ganasius.
and we are back to discuss a preview game for the upcoming Seahawks Jets game. Seahawks will be traveling to New York. They did have a bit of a short week. Mike McDonald mentioned in his presser because they got the holiday off. But this is a really big turning point for this team in terms of what this game can mean. Right now, Seahawks are first in the division, which is exciting to say as we approach the latter stretch of the football season. But still a lot of work to do for sure. This game goes a long way, I think, for them to submit themselves as a legitimate I will say contender. I think you have to be able to take care of games like this in order to be able to legitimately say they are. But right now, leading up to this game, the Seahawks control their own destiny. Before we get into it, how you feeling, Tito?
3-8 Jets. Aaron Rodgers, 1.5 feet out the door. They want to kick him. New coach. That's an organization in turmoil. New GM gets fired. They're going to have to flip the entire team, right? And mortgage some picks. Mortgaged a pick to bring in Devontae Adams. That didn't work. Invested a ton in the offensive line. That's kind of worked. Sauce Gardner's gone backwards. I just think this is a game that if the Seahawks are serious about contending this season, this is a game they have to have, right? From here on out, basically, if you're 6-5 and you're tied in the NFC West, you've got to, keep pace with the Cardinals and probably the Rams as well. You can't drop a game to a 3-8 team. Traveling to the East Coast doesn't matter. Playing Aaron Rodgers isn't the Aaron Rodgers we think of. Hasn't been for the last couple of years now, right? So this is a winnable game. This is the win that they should get. This is against a team that has essentially given up. Their inside linebacker, CJ Mosley, is likely out for this game, which is positive for the running game. So you asked me how I'm feeling. I'm feeling like this is the type of game the Seahawks organization over the last, 10 years has lost. Because it's the kind of game where you say, you know what, this matchup is great. I think the Seahawks should win. They go in there, lay an egg, right? We're used to that as Seahawks fans. I expect this team to go in and win. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think you've got a lot of prideful players on the Jets. You've got a couple of potential Hall of Famers. Tyron Smith isn't playing, I don't think, but you've got Tyron Smith is going in the Hall of Fame as a left tackle. Aaron Rodgers is going into the Hall of Fame. Devontae Adams may have a case for the Hall of Fame eventually. They have pride. And so this is a game the Seahawks are going to really, truly have to show up. But they get this win. You go to 7-5. Things are looking up for this team. They got to stop the run, and they're going to have to score some points.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think that's a great point you brought up, because that's exactly where my head is at. This game is a interesting game to me because when I looked at matchups, talent for talent, I go, well, there's a couple situations where the Seahawks aren't advantageous because the Jets have legitimate talent. Talent is not their problem, but just the dysfunction within the organization has completely, infested the team. And as a result, you see, like you said, a 3-8 team. When in reality, they probably had the talent to be 8-3. Now, coaching and all that goes into it, but so I look at that, but then you look at all these team stats and you go, well, they're bad at this and they're bad at that. And so it's such an interesting dynamic because I completely agree with you on your point. And how many times have we seen, at least there's one a year where you say, under the Pete Carroll regime, you say this is a pivotal game for us, a lot on the line, got to have this win, and then they drop it. To me, what comes to mind specifically in the Russell Wilson era is a game against the Giants. Was that 2020 or 2021? 20, something like that. It was I think they could have had the number one seed in the NFC, I believe, at that point, and then had a game against Colt McCoy, of course, Colt McCoy, and the New York Giants, and dropped it. And so New York, actually, ironically, is a place that these things have tended to shift. And so you're right, they have to have this game, but I can't picture a more or a better illustration of a trap game than this one right here.
Yep, I agree. Think about the Giants game this year, right? Week 5, Seahawks are 3-1, playing at home. We all know Daniel Jones is trash. Saquon Barkley's gone. they come in and beat the Seahawks 29-20, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all that positive momentum from going 3-0 out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, I think these are the ups and downs of a new coaching staff. I think it's a team that, if your team hasn't quite gelled yet, it's going to show, right? You're traveling across country. But again, if the Seahawks are for real about this particular season, which I think they are, I know they want to be, they will show up for this game. I don't know. I'm excited. We'll get into more of the details in a minute, but I think this is a win for the Seahawks. I do believe that they will show up. I think they're going to have a lot of momentum with DK Metcalf kind of being healthy again. Really, the whole team is healthy outside of Brady Russell and the new safety they acquired. So they should be really good to go and should be able to show up in this game.
Yeah, for sure. Now we'll get into predictions at the end. I am envisioning a close one. I don't think that this is going to be one of those easy wins. I would love to be wrong. I really would love to be wrong on that. But I just have a feeling that between the travel, between a little bit of a, they've had turkey or whatever, there might be some, they may have to get an edge back and sort of dig in deep and find their way. I ultimately believe coaching will matter though in this game. And so let's get into the actual matchups, because when I was looking at sort of player for player, like I mentioned, the talent is there. I mean, you've got Quinnen Williams, who is a top 5 defensive lineman, no question, can absolutely wreck a game for you against what is a porous offensive line. For me, one of the major matchups to watch for is Quinnen Williams against Christian Haynes, who has had an interesting journey, to say the least, through this point. I saw some promising stats in his last game. I saw some other stats that were not so promising. So
Do we know that he's going to be active? Because I think Brady Henderson came out and said that Sataoa Laumea was going to start at right guard. And so
he is going to start?
Well, yeah, so Laumea is going to start at right guard.
I didn't see that one I missed.
So we'll see if Haynes is even going to be, if he's going to be a healthy scratch, or if they're going to rotate.
They got to keep him active for health. For health, I think they got to keep him active. But it's interesting that they're starting Laumea. That's very interesting. I did not miss that. My apologies.
It was the Thanksgiving holiday. We're all over the board. I get it. I just read it.
Yeah, I missed that one.
But you're right, though. If you got a rookie, what is it, 5th or 6th round, what was a tackle in college, getting his first taste of NFL action against Quinnen Williams, and even Javon Kinlaw, their other tackle, was the first round pick of the 49ers, right? And he didn't necessarily flame out. He ended up, signing with the Jets, but that's a big dude. He's 6'6", he's powerful. You've got Will McDonald on the outside, a very good edge rusher, another number 1 pick. Quincy Williams, who's Quinnen's brother, is a great off-ball linebacker. There's a ton, and obviously Sauce Gardner in them. That's a really, really talented defense. You're right that you look at the names, even on offense, you look at the names, and you're looking at, to me, it looks like a team I might put together on Madden that is highly rated, and has a bunch of big names on it.
Yeah.
But it might be a team that someone who doesn't know how to play very well is playing. And so the team is, doesn't perform well, ends up 3-8 like these Jets. I think that is the case. Jeff Ulbrich, their interim coach that took over for Robert Saleh, you can tell just watching him and how he's making decisions on the sidelines. He's not a good coach, right? He's not able to really process in the moment what's going on. And, it's been out there that Aaron Rodgers, like, handpicked guy to coach the rest of the season. And so if you have even though you have all this talent on the field, I think what you were getting at, and I agree, is they don't really gel well. They're not playing like a team. Right. You have plenty of defenses that are better defenses with lesser names and lesser investment, but better coaching, right? There's no cohesion. Think about the Seahawks and the way the Seahawks defense was before Ernest Jones and before cutting Tyrell Dotson. This was a defense where we were so excited preseason, right? Offseason. We were like, this defense is going to be great. Look at the names. Look at all 3 levels have talent. And they were terrible. Not terrible. They weren't good, right? Now they're really good because they're playing together. And I think that's what the Jets don't have, at least from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think a big key to this game is being able to give opportunity and time to pass the ball and to run the ball.
Yep.
Frankly, I'm not. I wish I had seen that before because I would have done a little bit of a deep dive
Mm.
on Satea. I'm just gonna say Satea, right? That's the way to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Lamea.
I'm just gonna stick with that. I think it's Satea
All right.
Lamea, but I don't want to keep messing it up. But I didn't get the chance. I didn't familiarize myself with him. He wasn't a guy I was familiar with at all before the team drafted him for sure. Like he wasn't a guy that I looked into pre-draft. So I was very unfamiliar with him. I was just like, okay, O lineman, cool. Pretty much
Right.
was my
Exactly.
assessment of that pick. And ultimately, you're glad that did make that pick because here we are. Haynes disappointing and not being able to step up and a good opportunity. Obviously, to start this guy, and not even I expected them to rotate snaps because Mike McDonald had mentioned that in his presser that they were going to sort of rotate in both guys and see how they did. He must have had a heck of a practice or a couple of practice week in order to be starting, or Haynes was just that bad, unfortunately.
I was going to say that you got to wonder, where is Haynes in the doghouse? Like, what is he doing, or what is he not doing? Whether it's practice habits, late for meetings, whatever it is, there's something going on where it's not clicking for him yet, right? Which is troubling, to be honest with you. This is a third-round pick. This is someone who a lot of folks thought was a steal in the third round. We were very excited about him, and for him to not start when Bradford goes on the injured list it's a red flag, right? That's a concerning sign. And Coach McDonald keeps everything so close to the vest. It's really hard to know exactly what's going on. But I don't know. I'm excited to see Laumea play. I like the pick when they made it. Those Utah lines are nasty, right? They opened some big holes in the running game, and he was the biggest part of that for them. And so, he comes in highly decorated, right? The problem was if he was on the outside when he was drafted, if he was going to play tackle, he didn't quite have the lateral quickness to play tackle, which is part of the reason why they moved him to guard. But they said he's nasty, he's tough, he is athletic moving forward. He doesn't need the same lateral quickness that he would at tackle playing guard. So I'm excited. Same way I was excited to see Jarrell play. I don't think that it's, the truth is, if neither of them are good, meaning Jarrell or Laumea, it's not as if you invested high picks in them. It's not the same deal as if Christian Haynes isn't good. But I do think, and this is part of their thinking, I would assume that they need to know whether these guys are players worth keeping or investing in the future. Because if they're not, right, say Laumea is terrible and Jarrell is too raw, then you need to replace those spots on the roster heading into next year. This is a very good way for them to have tape on these guys and help them to make a decision as to whether they're the right players for this organization or not.
Yeah, I'm absolutely for the move because I've sort of theorized that he's just been hesitant to start the rookies. That seems to have either changed or maybe it wasn't true at all. But there was a hesitancy there in the beginning. But I just think he's getting to the point now where he's so disappointed in what he has, and he feels like he's done all the tweaking, all of the things on his part that he can do. And at this point, I think he wants to see other guys. To your point, really hope he can hold up. And my hope is for Laumea is, can you just, even if you're just good at the run game, can you just give the team that? There's been so much inconsistency in both pass protection and the run game, and no player has been consistently good at anything. And that's made it impossible to be able for Geno to be able to operate. And Gruff's, he is working with a hand tie behind his back because he can't do one or the other. Like Laken Tomlinson is supposed to be a run grader and looked terrible in the run game against the Cardinals on tape. He looked awful in a lot of those snaps. Going back and looking at some of those pieces, some of those clips, man, he just looks bad. So I hope he can come in and give them stability at something. And he might struggle in pass protection, but at this point, it's something I can live with. Now, you wish you had a little bit more stabilization at the center position because Olu is also very up and down, I believe, in his snaps that he got, especially against a formidable defensive line. A little worried about what that will look like. But again, to your point, you need to know what you have.
Yep.
And this game while they do have a lot on the line, this also is the first year, and they have a lot
Right.
they have a lot of things they need to evaluate and things to make. If the vets aren't getting it done, then I completely agree with this approach and just see what you have in the young guys.
Mm-hmm. It's, one of the criticisms of Haynes this year has been that he hasn't held up well against power, right? That he
Yeah.
doesn't have that strength yet, to hold up against the most powerful D tackles. And you're going against two very powerful ones in Quentin Williams and Javon Kinlaw. And so if they may have simply said Laumea has more kind of functional strength at this point in time, right? He can anchor better. And if he can anchor better and just hold up physically, and they don't ask much of him other than just, try to hold up physically for a little while against these guys. We know you're going to get beat sometimes, but he has enough oomph in him to be able to do that. I'm guessing that's a part of the thinking because, again, that is part of the criticism of Haynes is despite, weighing over 300 pounds, he doesn't have that kind of strength to hold up against power yet.
Yep, no, for sure. So that's for sure a key matchup to watch. And here's one that typically whenever you're looking at matchups, it's going to involve DK. But when thinking about this game and the players involved, I actually thought DJ Reed versus JSN was going to be a really interesting matchup because DJ Reed is a pretty sticky guy in coverage, and JSN has at times, particularly in the beginning of the year, struggled with separation. And JSN has, in the past few weeks, emerged as truly the number one wide receiver. Now, I think we talked about this before. I think it ultimately will be more of a 1A, 1B with him and DK. And so really wondering, can JSN still get production? Because I'm going to assume they're going to have Sauce Gardner on DK. I could be wrong, but that's just kind of how, if I were the Jets, now their coaching staff's a mess, but if I were the Jets, that's how I would try to line things up. And so I'm actually wondering, is this a game that DK maybe steps up a little bit and is able to get? Because I think DK against Sauce Gardner, I'll take DK, frankly, all day. I always saw Sauce was a little bit overhyped. I'm saying he wasn't talented, but I just thought he was a little overhyped. I think he held a lot and he got away with a lot of holding calls, frankly. I think DK's physicality can sort of mess with him, but DK has to be able to high point the ball and be able to be consistent with his hands. He's, flat, hit or miss with that. Sometimes he can make big time catches. Other times, not so much. But I got him as an X factor.
Gardner has really taken a couple of steps back this year. And it's really evident watching the Jets that he's not the same player that he was. He doesn't have the same effectiveness that he did. I think you're right. Part of it is that he got away with a lot of physicality and a lot of holding early on in his career, and he's not getting away with as much, but he doesn't look like the same player. And so, I do think that DK has some opportunity against Gardner. I also think that you're right. DJ Reed is really sticky. But I have to ask the question with JSN, how is it, are we not giving enough credit to scheme and to Ryan Grubb that JSN has been able to take off in the way that he has? I know that he's developed into a very good receiver, but I also think that there's some things that they're doing to get him open that are allowing him to get open. I also think it's not a coincidence that DK comes back from injury and the field opens up for JSN underneath a lot more. And it's just, again, we know DK's value is not only, getting deep and making big catches, but it's simply stretching the defense, taking the safety with him and opening it up for the others. But I think you're right. It's that JSN against DJ Reed matchup is going to be huge. It's going to be huge. I expect the Seahawks to take some chances with DK deep. I don't know that they will complete those passes, but I do think a big game from JSN is necessary in this game, most likely.
Yeah, I say the opposite. I say I don't think you have to stress it. I will say Grubb's done a pretty good job of getting DK when he was force feeding DK the ball, of getting him open in different ways, right? So we didn't just see DK go deep all the time. Sometimes he had intermediate routes and that sort of thing. I think they can take advantage of that, and I think DK could probably win in those matchups, maybe more so than going deep. I'll still give Sauce probably advantage in terms of the deep ball, but can he still get open? DK's gotten better at route running when he wants to be. Sometimes I think it's effort for him with route running, but when he wants to be, he can be a very good route runner. Can he catch Sauce off guard with it? Because he can have some shiftiness to him for a big guy. For a guy his size, some shiftiness to him that I think could probably give him the advantage because he's already physically, I think he's got the physical advantage.
Everybody else, yeah.
But yeah, so those are just in terms of um, key matchups on offense for
Mhm.
me. That's sort of what I'm looking at. Anything for you on offense?
Well, the tackles still have to hold up,
Yeah,
right? Well, McDonald is a very good D end, and he definitely can get to the passer. And Quincy Williams is more effective in coverage, but he's fast. As far as like a weak side linebacker goes, he's as fast as they come. And so there's, Lucas needs to stay healthy. And I hate to say it, and I'm not even trying to be, smart in saying that. It's just every game I want him to stay healthy, but I expect him to get hurt. And Charles Cross has really regressed as far as his performance at left tackle. And so they have to hold up because the interior is not going to hold up. It is likely
yeah.
the interior is going to get blown over a little bit, and they're going to have to move Gino off the spot and get him on the outside a little bit, right? And at least I would expect that. But in order to do that, your tackles have to hold up as well. So it
Mhm.
is going to be interesting because you see those names on, like you said, on the Jets defense, and you see threat, right? You see very good defensive players. Like we say it over and over again every single week. It's up to the line. If the line can hold up, this team scores points. If the line can't hold up, then you're counting on Gino to be a magician, and we know that's hit and miss. There are days where he can pull it out, and there's days where he doesn't.
Well, I think you need more than just a line to hold up. Frankly, I think you do need your wide receivers to show up. I really do. I don't think you're getting much from the tight end room, and so against who I think are a couple of really good corners, I think just as equally as the line needs to hold up, dudes gotta be able to make some contested catches or get open. I'll take either, but they gotta be able to move and have some drives. They gotta be able to get some momentum going. That's been
Mhm.
such a problem with this team, particularly opening up with games have yet, I believe, to see a opening touchdown drive.
Right.
They've gotten to field goal range a few times, and sometimes not even that. And so you really love to see this offense start off well because this is a team that, like you said, isn't playing like a team. And so
Right.
starting strong, starting fast, it's really important to putting the Jets away. It's a team that
Mhm.
if you can put them away, they'll stay away. But if you let them hang around, if you three and out and you three and out and you three and out, and you can't
Right.
sustain drives, you give the Jets and Aaron Rodgers momentum that they desperately need.
Right. Their belief, right? I think what I hear you saying is you can basically cut their heart out by scoring on them early. You go
Mhm.
up 10-0, 14-0 on the Jets, they've given up, right? We
Yep.
already know it's a lost year. We're 3-8. Forget Aaron Rodgers, on to the next. But if it's a close game, the competitor in, as I said, the Devontae Adams and the Garrett Wilsons and the Brees Halls and the Aaron Rodgers, that's going to come out if you don't put your foot on their throat, basically. Well,
Yeah.
and I'll bring it up, and this is intentional. You think about the Michigan Ohio State game earlier today. It was a 6-5 Michigan team going into the horseshoe against the number 2 ranked team in the country, 10-1 Ohio State, that only lost to number 1 Oregon. They let us stay in the game. The game was 10-10 at the half. The game was 10-10 going into the fourth. Michigan ends up winning 13-10. We had no business winning that game. But the reality is we had belief because the game stayed close and you felt it. You could feel it through the television. And I think for the Seahawks case, the Seahawks have to be able to really come out quickly, really, do damage, whether it's defensively, you're swarming and you're hitting the quarterback and you're letting them know we're here, or it's scoring early. But I think that the only way the Jets are going to win this game is by sticking close. But the Seahawks have an opportunity. They
Yeah.
definitely have an opportunity. See, I also will say that I assume the wide receivers will show up. I think that for the most part, the skilled position players, when healthy, have played very well for the Seahawks. I think that the consistency of K9 is great. I think he shows up every week. I think sometimes he doesn't have holes to run through, but he shows up. DK can be in and out mentally, but JSN as well, I think, shows up most weeks. So I expect them to play well. I expect them to get open. Again, my question is, does Gino have the time to get them the ball?
Well, I only say that because I think this is probably the best 1-2 cornerback combination that we faced this year in
Mhm.
terms of talent, right?
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah,
you know, their performance has not been up to snuff. But in terms of talent, I do think this is the best cornerback tandem, and so that's kind of where I'm going with it. And I may be missing one other one, but I sort of look at this as a one of the best. I don't think they're going to face a better tandem. So while generally speaking, I completely agree with you. This particular game, especially when you look at all the circumstances, Jets, being down, me feeling like this is a trap game. This is a game where their 1-2 cornerback tandem could get the best of your wide receivers, who are generally your more consistent players.
Yep. Well, and we know what DJ Reed can do, right? We miss DJ Reed. DJ Reed was a very good corner. And he's played even better, I think, as a Jet. I do think their safeties are a little vulnerable. I do think that the Seahawks can, pick on the safeties a little bit. I wish we had a good tight end. I think a good tight end could really open, especially against this team. I think a good pass catching tight end could really exploit the matchups with these safeties. But again, their season is over, right? Their season is Nate Hackett as their OC hasn't been good. Breece Hall was like a top 3 fantasy pick, and he's been trashed this year. He shows flashes, but there's just all this, again, on Madden, this is like this team is rated a 90 because there's all these stars, but there's no cohesion. There's no cohesion. It doesn't work in its current iteration for the Jets.
For sure. All right, on defense, I've sort of got my wild cards as so like you mentioned it earlier. The Jets don't have a left tackle. They have to start Olu
Fashanu.
Fashanu. I think Boye Mafe could take advantage of that matchup. I think he needs a week to sort of bounce back. Been a little bit of a downturn. We were talking about Boye Mafe. Like you said, we'd always say he's the best edge rusher on this team. He hadn't been playing like the past 4 weeks. Now he did much better against the Cardinals, but can you build on that momentum? Can you continue to find a rhythm pressuring Aaron Rodgers? He's not mobile anymore. Can you put pressure on that offensive line? I think Boye having a big game or Derek Hall having a big game is a really key part to this defense taking off and continuing that momentum that you've seen them build.
I agree. Fashanu was a top. I think he was picked maybe 12th overall, somewhere in there. So he was a high pick last year. But you pick a tackle out of Penn State that high, and he's not starting for you in his rookie year until an injury. I think that says a bit about where he is in his development. There's some of the Christian Haynes developmental cycle is what it looks like to me. They had talked about playing him at guard this year, coming into the season a little bit, and then moving him out to tackle as needed. And they really haven't done that either. So whether he is talented or not, whether he's physically talented or not, he still has a lot to learn, clearly. Otherwise, they would be playing him, right? Tyron Smith has bad knees and bad back. Despite the fact being a Hall of Famer, he's not who he once was. And Morgan Moses, they re-signed. I believe they re-signed, or he left and came back. But he's a serviceable right tackle, but he's no great shakes, right? And so I just think that there is opportunity on the outside. And then their guards, Elijah Vera-Tucker was a first-round pick as well out of USC, but they're not. This line isn't what it should be. Again, microcosm of the entire team. Big names, first-round picks, future Hall of Famer, but not playing together. And as you said, Aaron Rodgers can't scramble anymore, right? He's pretty much a sitting duck back there. So if they can get pressure, especially up the middle, knowing that Rodgers can't scramble, it's going to be a tough game for them. And their best, and Devontae Adams is not, while he's a technician on the outside, he's not fast. And so he's not, his creating separation is with his body and with his release. And that's something that the Seahawks can defense a little bit better than a lot of teams can.
Yep. Yeah, that was my other, to your point, that was my other matchup was Tariq versus Adams. And I think Tariq should be able to do a good job, but Adams does have some vet savvy. And so Tariq has been known to have some mental lapses and, get maybe not his head in the game where it should be. He's had a history of that. Can he lock in? If he can lock in, I got no question that he can absolutely dominate that matchup, but he's got to lock in mentally. And so that's a big question. Does he get caught up in how they've been performing? Can he, make it a statement game? It's still Devontae Adams. At the end of the day, yes, he's less productive. Yes, this whole team has got a lot of issues, but he's still Devontae Adams. And hopefully he takes that as a challenge and wants to step up to that. And I think it's a good opportunity for him to, and that he might, as long as he doesn't get caught up in the noise or whatever, or Thanksgiving holiday, eat too much turkey, he'll be all right, I think.
It's crazy because, Reek is one of the most physically talented cornerbacks in the game. I think it's undeniable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sub 4.3 speed, 6'3", 6'4", which you don't see out of corners often. His rookie year, he was an all-pro, right? Or Pro Bowler, damn near all-pro.
Yep.
And you just see these mental lapses. I forgot which game it was this year, but he was getting burnt, and it was mental. It wasn't physical.
Was that the Bills game that he called? Was that the Bills game? Yeah.
Yep. Where he, you can tell, like, he cares, but he's not thinking. He's not focused. He's not using his head. And it's the kind of thing that we take for granted with Spoon, but Spoon doesn't have those lapses, right? Spoon's locked in all the time. And so against a player like Davante Adams, you lose track of him or you're not thinking straight, he will get behind you. And he's not missing anything, right? And Aaron Rodgers, he and Aaron Rodgers have great chemistry. So I think that is a really important matchup, is Woolen against Adams, if that is indeed what it is. I do have some concern, Garrett Wilson against whoever the other outside corner is, whether it's Job or Brown or whomever it is not a great matchup. And Garrett Wilson has the potential to be a top 5 receiver in the league. He has that kind of talent. And he hasn't really come out in the way that I think we expected him to this year. So that is a matchup that worries me a bit. Our lads actually has Davante Adams listed as their slot. I don't see him playing in the slot all the time, but I'll take that matchup too. Adams against Spoon against the world. I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
I'll take Spoon.
No, for real. Yes.
Spoon.
Completely agree. Yeah, that doesn't even concern. I guess that's why I didn't even think of it as I figured they probably have Witherspoon covering Wilson quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fine, honestly. Not to say that Gary Wilson is a talent. I know he's talented, but I just think Witherspoon, like you said, he's going to be locked in. He's going to have a point to prove.
Can I just say that again? So I was just thinking to myself, looking at the lineup for the Jets. If we didn't have Ernest Jones and we were still rolling old Dotson and Baker out there, right? I would look at this matchup and I'd say to myself, Breece Hall could have a field day if he can get past the D line. And Breece Hall is a 4.3 speed tailback. What's that?
If he plays.
Yes, if he plays. Even Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen is big, tough, strong, nasty. Braylon Allen is the number 1 back on a different team. And so what I'm getting at is, if we had the same old dirty linebacker crew that we had coming into this year and not replace them with Tyrese Knight and Ernest Jones, I'd be scared. I'd be nervous about this game. I'd be saying that the Jets could potentially hold the ball and run the Seahawks over, right? If they don't tackle them at the line. But there's so much comfort and so much confidence in having Jones and Knight as your linebackers, now specifically Jones, right? It's just you approach the game in such a different way, having that kind of talent and that intelligence at that position. We realize now, after those guys are gone, how poorly I think they were playing, and we just didn't always see it, right? It was hidden by other things. We did at times, but Jones has completely shored that up. And so I look at Breece Hall and I say, you know what? He might bust a couple, but realistically, if you base it on what the Seahawks defense has been since Jones was brought in, you don't have to worry about the other team's running game in the way that you did before. And I think that's a huge, huge deal that I want to make sure we're not glossing over or we're not taking for granted, because it's night and day. It's absolutely night and day what the Seahawks defense can do against a good running game.
Yeah, to your point, I actually would have been more scared of Allen than Hall, because they both, like, Hall had such an explosion, but the physicality was what got the Seahawks beat constantly over and over and over again. And Allen is just a bruiser, and that he just would have run and basically run the entire, ultimately the defensive line, but in reality, it would have been the linebackers that he would have just ran, and they could have definitely, I think, gotten points on the board like that. But to your point, the fact that if they are going with Allen and Hall isn't able to play, you much prefer Ernest Jones, and I feel confident that he can handle physicality. He's not afraid to get his nose in there. He's patient with filling in gaps. He's got a good feel for it. He's not, and he's still getting better. I think like he's not perfect, but he's just now learning the scheme literally on the go, and he's able to still be everything that this team needs from him and more.
Right.
Having great command, I think, over this defense, as well as you got Tyrese Knight, who also I think is not afraid to go downhill. That was his strength coming out of college, is downhill linebacker. So just because, I think I feel confident in those guys, no matter even if Hall does play, to your point. But I think Allen would have been my X factor for the Jets because of that physicality that Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson in this specific scheme just weren't able to make work.
Right. Braylon Allen, so I watched him at Wisconsin. He's young too. He's super young for being a rookie.
Right.
He's he's scary because he gets downhill, especially if they let him play, when they're running out of under center instead of out of the gun, because those big backs need that runway, right? He would have ran over Dotson and Baker. I'm sorry. They would not have been able to hold up against him. Nope. But again, Ernest Jones is so powerful and so different that he can feel, and you don't worry about the running game the way that we used to. I'm thankful. If we're talking about Thanksgiving, I'm thankful for that trade for Ernest Jones and sign him to an extension because we need him. Yeah.
Tuesday. No, definitely agree. No, for sure. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I have in terms of matchups. Like you said, this team has a lot of talent. You can talk about talent all day in different ways, but, I think there are just a few key players here and there that can flip the game one way or the other. You obviously are hoping that the Seahawks guys show up.
Right.
I think you did make a good point about McDonald, that probably against the tackle. I guess I just have a little bit more confidence in our tackles than our guards, despite the fact that, Charles Cross has regressed. I still am just super nervous about the interior on the offensive line. So I think that can flip a game. I guess I have a little bit more hope. Maybe I'm giving Cross too much confidence, but I'm hoping that he can hold up pretty well, and be decent, right? Like I know he's regressed, but can he be decent in that way? And Abe Lucas has seemingly gotten better. Like your point, can he stay healthy for the duration of the game? It's going to be a question, but yeah, I mean,
I think they're going to have to go, get the ball on the perimeter a bit. I expect to see some quick stuff to the perimeter to try to slow down the pass rush a bit. I would expect to see some screens to the wide receivers. Some passes to Kenneth Walker I expect to see as well. Although Quincy Williams is very good in coverage against running backs, and so that might look a little different against the Jets. But obviously we know the way to neutralize that pass rush or to neutralize the fact that you have got a pretty terrible offensive line is to get the ball out quickly. And we don't really have a tight end to catch the ball in that way. I guess Fant could, but it's not. He's been hurt, and he hasn't been great when he's been out there. He's been okay, but not great. So again, I expect to see the ball go the outside, see some tunnel screens, see some quick stuff. I'd love to see the ball. I love it when DK gets the ball a lot, especially on the outside. You just allow him to try to break tackles and get past Sauce. I think that might happen a bit, but they're going to have to do something because that pass rush is going to come, and it is going to. I don't have the same confidence that you do. I think that I want Charles Cross to be an All-Pro so bad, and I think the talent is in there, but he's been beat really, really, really bad in the last couple of games.
Yeah,
where you see the guy he's trying to block, getting to the quarterback, and you see him chasing. You don't want to see the front of his numbers, the front of his jersey. You want to see him blocking, and he's not been doing that the last couple of weeks. So we'll see. I'm nervous. That's where, in my opinion, the Seahawks would lose the game. Is if they can't protect Geno and they can't get the running game going, then the Jets don't have to score that many points. I expect the Jets to score. I just don't expect them to put up 24, 28 times.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be a defensive game. I think the defenses will step up, and I anticipate that you'll see that on both sides of the ball because that is showing my confidence in what I've seen in the Seahawks defense so far. But you absolutely need to at least squeeze out some essential plays. You love Tino in a 2-minute drill. You wish they do that hurry up offense just a couple more times, just to again get that lead out early. You don't have to wait to 2 minutes before halftime to run that up tempo offense. You can throw it in throughout the game. I don't know why they don't, frankly.
And you neutralize great defensive tackles by running that hurry up, right?
Yes.
Defensive tackles are the first ones to get tired on the field, on the defense. So if you run that 2-minute stuff and Quentin Williams and Javon Kinlaw get tired and they can't sub out because you're not subbing in, I think that's a great point on your part, that running that is something that both gets the Seahawks into a rhythm. We've seen that time and again, and it tires out what is probably the best part of the Jets defense. Again, going back to the Michigan game, the Michigan strength is this the best front four in college football. And the 2 defensive tackles are going to be first-round picks. Likely one of them going in the top 5. And when Ohio State ran hurry up at the end of the first half, they had neutralized that offensive or that defensive line and scored a touchdown. Then they went away from it. And so, again, I think that in this game, that would be an incredible – I didn't think about it. That's a great point, that using that strategy, I think, would work very, very well against this Jets defense.
Don't know if they will, but it'd be great to see, especially early. Like, again, putting the seam away early matters. If they could do that just a few times and get some points on the board, even though they don't get the touchdowns, right? Even just getting points on the board, driving down the field, I think that does you enough, frankly, to be able to get a lead out in front of this Jets offense that has been struggling, frankly, because Aaron Rodgers, we've not talked about this yet, but we've mentioned it, but like, he's just not Aaron Rodgers of old. His accuracy is off. You could just tell watching him. And granted, he's thrown less picks than Gino, but the accuracy is just not there. And that's pretty much Aaron Rodgers' bread and butter. That and the ability to have a sneaky mobility. He's never like the most mobile guy, but he had sneaky mobility in order to make plays here and there, extend a play, that sort of thing. He doesn't have that ability anymore. That is completely gone. And so, you don't want that offense to get cooking. You really want to, if you can get out early, you can get up tempo, you can, for Jesus Christ, please run under center. Oh my goodness. If we can run the ball under center.
That would like me now. You said
you would help you, man. I mean, you're playing a tough defensive line. Man, make it hard on them. You know how easy it is to defend out of the shotgun from the run? Like you said, I mean, even Zach Charbonnet, he looks useless running out of shotgun in some ways.
Well, there's no acceleration. There's no acceleration, right? He just does not. His first couple he takes a couple of steps just to get started. K9, I get it to a certain extent because he can go 0 to 60 immediately. Right. And so if he sees a hole, he can accelerate and go. But a back like Braylon Allen, a back like Charbonnet, they need to get the motor going, right? They need to be able to take a couple of steps before. Yes. Right. Well, that's the other thing. Play action is much more effective under center than it is out of the gun. We all know that.
Exactly. It's NFL 101. I am looking. I will continue to be looking for Grubb to just give me some NFL fundamentals. I think he is a great mind. I think he's a great play designer. I think he designs plays well. I'm just not sure that he stacks them up well. I think he adjusts well. I still do think that he's good at making adjustments, so much so. Somebody needs to ask him, what is his opening script? Like, does he have a script? Is he just winging it? Whatever he does at the beginning of games, I need for him to stop doing that or to change it in some way. Because he seems to be much better.
The second half. The old school West Coast offenses, like Mike Holmgren and those guys, they used to, I think it was 15, 20, 25 plays. I think it was 15. But Bill Walsh and then Mike Holmgren, they used to script those plays and they said, no matter, down doesn't matter, distance doesn't matter. This is what we're doing the first however many plays, because they believe in those plays and it established a narrative as to what, their offense was going to look like, but also kind of set up play action and some of the other stuff, for the rest of the game. Because you showed them certain looks and you would guarantee you were going to show them all the looks you needed to by scripting it that way. I would love to see Ryan Grubb do that, right? And just say, we haven't been scoring in the beginning of the game anyways. We might as well script it and get on tape all the things we need to so that we can run the same formation and the same looking play and then run play action off of it. Or we can run out of this formation that we passed out of 90% of the time, to show them a different look. And you have to assume they're researching that stuff and trying to do that stuff. But I think you're spot on that his in-game play calling and play sequencing is not good right now. It's really, there's no rhythm, right? Mm-hmm. Some play callers like Ben Johnson in Detroit, he gets a rhythm. You start feeling it. You're like, okay, Gibbs just went outside for 25. Montgomery just ran and ripped off, 2 11-yard runs on the inside. Now he's going play action to Jamison Williams. Now it's Amon-Ra St. Brown over the middle, right? There's a rhythm to what they do, and you can feel it watching the game. There is no rhythm to Ryan Grubb right now. There's just not.
No, because he's still trying to find an identity.
And I hope that that's just first year understanding the NFL, because you're right. His brain is very good. I think his ability to adjust at halftime is very good. Mm-hmm. Play design, there's some cool stuff that he's doing, but he's got to continue to learn on the job. I have confidence that he will. I think he's a very smart guy. I always wondered though what it must be like to be a play caller in the NFL though. That's a lot of pressure, right? That's a lot of what we saw. Did you watch the Bears game over Thanksgiving?
No, I saw those lineups and decided I think my Thanksgiving was better spent watching my family.
Right. Well, Eberflus his.
I saw the last play though, like the end. I saw how the game ended.
And you're thinking to yourself, like, what's going on? Is his brain locked? There's something that's amiss, because we all were screaming what needed to happen, and he didn't do it. And Caleb didn't do it either, but I assume that Caleb was doing what his coach was telling him to do. Mm-hmm. So, there might be some of that. The learning curve for Grubb might be a lot steeper than we thought it would be. But he seems to be very capable. He seems to me to be a very capable, very smart offensive mind. I think there's a reason why he was so sought after after last season. I want to give him another year. I think if we see the same issues next year, then we need to address an issue. But for now, I think this is just him learning and getting up to speed.
Yeah, I'm watching for NFL fundamentals. That's my big thing right now. I just need to see a little bit more NFL concepts. Right now, it's a little bit too pro. It's pro style, but it's not pro ready, if that makes sense. Like, there are just some little nuances I think that are missing to make this the foundation of a true NFL offense.
Sure. What's the detail, right?
Like college to me.
It's the detail. So it's when we watch like a LaFleur offense or a McVay offense or even a Mike McDaniel offense, right? In Miami, the detail of the number, we talked about this a little bit, I think, over BlueSky, where it's the number of steps the receiver takes, right? The length of the step, when they cut. It's the simple explanation is a receiver runs an out pattern and the quarterback lets go of the ball before the receiver is even into his break, because they know exactly where the receiver is going to be when. And that kind of timing, I think part of it too is DK is not good at that, right? DK is not we've seen some of the lazy routes lead to interceptions. I think JSN can do that, but it's not in sync, right? And so the detail isn't there in the way that I think we want it to be. I also would say that a bad line doesn't allow you to get to that level of detail, because Gino's already scrambling for his life before the pattern is supposed to, complete, right? Yeah. And so you just end up discombobulated and not really having any sort of rhythm to your offense when you're scrambling for your life all the time.
Yeah, it's this weird dynamic where I feel like there are drives that I would solely put on the O-line, and there are drives that I would put on just concept or like play call sequencing, like you said. Yep. So we'll see what happens, but that's just something I'm monitoring, especially as these last 6 weeks, in order for me to have any confidence in what this offense can be next season. I'm sure they're not going to fire Grubb. I would be surprised, but they did fire Tyrell Dodson, so I don't know. I don't anticipate that they're going to fire Grubb, given the offensive line struggles, and they know they could have given him better tools. But I still worry that, sometimes it's a little bit above the offensive line. And I think there are things they can do to help the offensive line. And that's what I keep looking for. That's what keeps frustrating me. Even if this team goes out and they put a lot of resources in the offensive line, I don't think it'll be remade overnight. You're still going to have to look for ways to help what is still not going to be a strong point for your team next season. Like, you're not fixing that overnight. We talked about 3, maybe even 4 holes that they've got to
Mhm.
fill in some kind of way. And
Right.
if you're keeping Charles Cross and you're extending him, we know he's very up and down. And so just there at no point do I anticipate them just having a top 5 offensive line. They're not having that next year. You
Right.
still got to, regardless of to what they do in the offseason or not, you got to help out who you have on the field. And I keep looking for Grubb to find ways to do that. It's not that hard, but
Mhm.
it doesn't seem to be in the front of his mind for whatever
It,
reason.
it just came to mind, like, why not run some 2 tight end sets with AJ Barner and Pharaoh Brown on
Yes.
either side of the tackles, right? And so it's a formation that the Colts made, super popular with one back, 2 tight ends, tight end on each side of the tackle, right? You come out, you can run tons of play action if you're under center, and you have 2 receivers, and there's a ton you can do with it. But at least you're shoring up the outside, right? And those guys at minimum can chip the edge rushers. And I think there's a lot that you can do out of that formation. We don't see that formation from the Seahawks.
Mm-mm.
Why not have 2 tight ends out there that can block? Why not play Brady Russell a bit if he's healthy and allow him to just help protect? Play him in an H-back role. You're going to probably need a back to help out with the interior of the line at times. Why not play with someone like that in the backfield to help against a Quinnen Williams coming up the middle? It seems simple, right? And I get frustrated because it feels like us who are just fans who happen to watch detail and enjoy the game, but have other jobs and other interests. You love basketball, I love baseball. Like, how can we see this and be 100%, convicted that we're right about this idea and not see them do it on the field, at least try to adjust and do it on the field? It's maddening. Now, I remember the Greatest Show on Turf with Mike Martz with the Rams. They used to go 5 wide when they couldn't protect. And they were like, we're going to get the ball out before you can get to Kurt Warner. And I always thought that was like Looney Tunes, but it worked. Now, if the Seahawks are going to do that, fine. But be reacting to the offensive line and the pressure and do something about it, as opposed to just running the same old, over and over again without trying to help those guys.
Yeah. A couple points. One, I would say that this team still leaves their tackles on an island far more than I think they should, given the talent that they have. I think that statistically, because it's still, to your point, constantly on islands, and I don't think you have the talent for that. But I will also add, the more frustrating part is that we've seen this, because I specifically remember the Lions game when they had no semblance of a running game in that first half. And then what they did in that second half was get the tight ends out and use the tight ends to create running lanes for K9, and it absolutely worked and made it a competitive game. We literally have seen it. Like we've seen it before, and I just don't understand why you wouldn't break that out. You saw the difference, and you saw the before and after, the stark difference in production in that game. Why we haven't, I don't think we've seen it since. To me, that's the most maddening part, and that's what concerns me more, is because you have it in your arsenal, you just won't use it for whatever reason. And it seems like a little bit of faulty logic if that's the case.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. I remember those. They started running left, right? They were using the tight end. They started running off of Charles Cross. Tomlinson had some blocks as well, and that was how they got back into that game.
Yep.
It was simply how they got back in the game. And I'm with you. Do it over and over again until a team proves they can't stop it, or they can stop it.
Yep.
And we haven't really seen that approach since that game from the Seahawks offense.
No one's wanted to say this, but it's giving slightly Shane Waldron, slightly, for different reasons. But I thought Waldron had good play designs. He just sucked in situational football, and he sucked it. He couldn't do adjustments at all. Grubb is in some ways the inverse, but I feel like there's still, in Waldron, there were basic concepts missing from his playbook. Seems like similar things. It's a different set of things. It seems like similar problem. That means where you have a very bright mind who's a great play designer, but when it comes to the play calling, you'd hope that Grubb, with all of experience in college, yes, it's college, but he still had a way more experience than Waldron ever had in terms of play calling. And so the sequencing wouldn't be as big of an issue, but it seems like that's still the main problem. And it still feels like this offense that's very talented doesn't have an identity. And that's interesting to me. I thought we were getting away from that problem. Well, I'll say this: the identity is throwing the ball. It's not a good identity. Maybe I should say a good identity because they do have one. It's shotgun. It's
Right.
throw it all over the field. But
Like Geno Cook basically
yeah,
is the only thing they can do. Well, and with I would say with Waldron, the thing that was maddening for me too was there was a lot of attempt at misdirection, and there
Mhm.
was a lot of like horizontal run stuff that bothered me because I felt like it was slow developing, and all of a sudden K9's running, towards the sideline, and it's a 3 yard loss, and it's not because anyone did anything wrong; it's just bad design for me. Waldron bothered me, and I think there's a reason why he was fired so quickly in Chicago. I
Oh,
think
for sure.
Grubb, there's a lot of, as you said, there's a lot of like really pretty stuff, especially when some of those 18-yard passes work. You look at the play and you're like, that's a pretty cool looking play,
Mhm.
but the run game needs help. And I do know that Coach McDonald wants to run the ball. It's important to him. We say it over and over again. I think they will go into the offseason with the priority of building a running scheme that is different and that will work for Kenneth Walker and the line players that they expect to be there next year. I think they're really going to focus on that. But yeah, it's just not what it needs to be yet. It's not at all what it needs to be yet. The running game is. It's let Geno cook and hopefully he doesn't throw a bad pick. That's the offense.
Yeah,
I hate
unfortunately,
to
yeah.
see,
Not
I
a
hate to
fan
see.
of it. I do.
Nope.
I'm with you. I'm a team balance, and right now it's not balanced, so I can't be happy with offense at all. Um,
You doing
anything else you want to
predictions?
cover in this preview before we get into predictions?
Predictions. I'm
Yeah.
ready. Mhm.
All right, you go first. You're ready. I still go ahead. Go, you go first.
24-3 Seahawks.
24-3.
24-3. I think this
That's
defense
insane.
takes another step forward. I think you're laughing at me. I'm such a homer. Here's the thing, though. I'm speaking it into existence. I think this defense is on the verge of being dominant. I really do. I think this defense has gelled. There's so much talent on this defense, and I think they're starting to show up in pockets. Right. Last week it was Leonard Williams. We're seeing Ernest Jones be consistent. We still haven't seen that huge game from Byron Murphy yet, but I think it's there. Right. Mafe has been hit and miss this season. But imagine they all show up and they all play close to what they can do. I think this defense has that potential to be dominant. And I think if they come out strong and the offense scores, they have a chance to really step on the Jets. And I think that's going to happen. I think the Jets are a franchise that's on fire right now. Um, I think they don't have any direction. They don't know who their quarterback is going to be next year. They don't know who their coach is going to be. They don't know who their GM is going to be. Those teams they're done. And I did talk about how I think they might be able to find some momentum. I just don't think it's going to happen. 24-3 Seahawks. I think they do enough offensively, and I think that the Seahawks are able to completely shut down that Jets offense.
Yeah, I'm not that confident at all. Oh,
I can tell by your face.
not
I
that
already know.
confident at all. I still think this team has a lot of talent, and I just don't know what it is. I think I can see the Jets trying to galvanize. I don't know that it would be effective, but I can see them trying to galvanize and put something together. Like you said, for pride, I think they are in straight. And typically, whenever in the entire world has written off a team, just
Mhm.
I've seen enough NFL football to know that team then likes to try to show a spark. But the
Right.
Seahawks can't let that happen. So I'm gonna go with 21-17. I think this would be more of a defensive slugger game. I just don't think it'll be high scoring. I would love to see the offensive line like Lamea to come out and like them be
Mhm.
able to shine and put together long drives. I don't anticipate that. I think it'll be a
Right.
lot of start and stop. I think it'll be a lot of pretty much just taking advantage of 2-minute drill offenses.
Mhm.
Maybe a defensive turnover helps them perhaps. But I didn't say this before though. I do think a big key to this game is Geno not turning the ball over for once
Mhm.
in like a season like that. Literally, it's only been one other game that he's not had a turnover. If we can make this clean football, I think it also increases the odds. And so that concerns me a little bit, but still think 21-17. I anticipate the Jets will be able to um, scare the Seahawks for sure. I don't think it's going to be that easy of a game. I think it's just too much talent on that team. And though our coaching staff is far and away better than theirs, still a really young and inexperienced team. And so I don't think that they're there's a big gap there, but I don't think it's the gap everybody might think it is, because of how new this team still is. But we've got a ton of talent too. I think in the end that will win out, and the cohesion of what this team will win out. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I wasn't nervous about it. This prediction, I almost predicted a loss. I couldn't do it emotionally. I couldn't emotionally say the words out loud. So I'm going to predict a win. But I need for the Seahawks to prove to me that they are legitimate and not just, a fluke.
Right. Or a roller coaster.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
24-3. Let's go. Let's go. Right on.
All right, Tino, man. Tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on BlueSky at Tino Jr. 20, TINOJR20. I assume we'll be live tweeting if we can. This game was a lot of fun last week. Should be a lot of fun this week, providing they win. Some of my baseball content is there. Some of my number stuff for baseball is there as well. But yeah, big win by Michigan today. I do need to shout out my Wolverines. Beat Ohio State 13-10. Unexpected, came into the game 6-5 against the number 2 team in the nation and took them out. Good times. And if you get mad because the visiting team is trying to plant a flag at midfield after they beat you, you know what? You should have just won the game. That's it for me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Happy for Tino. And he'll be on cloud 9 up until
364 days. 364 days. I'm going to be talking that mess. I can't wait.
Great stuff. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Seahawks Pod. We are also on BlueSky. Follow us at Seahawks360. If you're listening on YouTube, please be sure to give us hit the notification bell. If you're listening, subscribe to us, give us a like on this page. It'll help us out trying to get us up our listener base. So, in the meantime, that's all for today. That's it. We're out. And as always,
go Hawks.